Hello everyone!
Hey!
Welcome to Uncut Gaming,
Where we don't edit our videos.
but we are ranking things.
Yes, we are.
And today we are ranking games.
That was our New Year resolution, to rank everything.
Everything. No, we're just kidding. We're only going to talk about games in this channel. But we did decide that because it's the end of the year and it's the end of the decade.
Yes, we're old. Thank you for reminding me.
We're old. And because this channel has been running for a year and a bit, for 4 months, a year and 4 months, we've decided to do our top 10 games of the decade.
Yep.
Yay.
Joy.
So let's talk about
I'm so stuck on how old we are.
I'm
upset now.
Let's not talk about it. So let's talk about how we rank these games. You want to go first?
How?
Or should I talk about it?
Basically, what I did was close my eyes, envisioned a perfect evening as far as company goes and time restrictions, and asked myself, what would I want to play? Like with absolutely no conditions, without thinking whether people are noobs, without thinking whether any of them are AP prone, without looking at the clock and saying, oh, we have 2.5 hours, so I need something that explains the rules, and If we eliminate all that, what it is that I want to play. And that's how we did the list.
Yeah.
You found an app that does like binary selection, and we ran through the list.
Yeah, I'll add the link to that site below. It's really easy to rank your games if everything is listed on BGG or if you just have the list in text. I do want to add, from my perspective, that I also sort of added games that I've sort of played enough, and me personally, I feel like less playing them as I used to, or some of the games, hint hint, I sort of finished playing them. I mean, I can play them, but they're sort of done. So for some of them, we'll get to them when we get to them.
Sure.
Yeah, just overall excellent games, all of them.
Yes,
we could
all
probably...
of them are worth checking out. They might not all be for you specifically, but all of them are worth looking at and seeing whether you know they fit you, whether you missed something.
And we tried to add like lighter games, heavier games. We didn't restrict ourselves in that regard, so we have...
Yeah, but surprise, surprise, most of them are heavy.
Yeah, most of them are heavy, right.
We are what we are.
Heavy.
And European.
And European.
And gay.
All right. In any case, the last thing that I want to mention is that links to every playthrough that we do have of these games will be linked at the description below.
Well, that's a lot of work. Good luck, honey.
No, that's not a lot of work. And if you want us to make any other sort of top X games of any criteria, like heavy games or party games or card drafting games or whatever, tell us in the comments below, and we'll try to...
If you want us to explain about one of the games in particular, any questions you might have about those games,
okay,
just comment.
All right. So before we actually start with our top 10, we have 2 honorary mentions.
You wanted to start with those? Yeah,
yes.
Sure. These are games that are not actually on our top 10 list. Like, we'll start with Codenames.
Yep.
And let's talk about... Oh, it's mine. Okay, sure. It's my honorary mention. Codenames is easy. It's incredibly easy. You're at a family gathering, you take out Codenames. You're with your noob friends, you take out Codenames. People surprise visit you at the house, you take out Codenames. It just fits everything and everyone. I think you're pretty sick of it.
Yeah, I think I'm done with Codenames. We have a bunch. So, by the way, if you're sort of done with Codenames, there are a bunch of other alternatives, right? Codenames Pictures. There's Codenames After Dark. Undercover, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also a cooperative mode of, or sort of variant of Codename.
Oh, the green one, Codename Duet.
Duet, yes.
Yeah. I don't think we have that one.
No.
Anywho, this is something that I think everyone should have in their house, just in case you're stuck entertaining people, and the game just flows really well and fits itself to almost any party or event dynamic that you might have. It's very light. People make their own sort of group dynamic, and I think this is its forte. It's like you can take it out with your grandmother and her geriatric friends, and you can take it out with young children.
Yeah.
And they will all have a slightly different variation on the game, and they will all have fun, which is what matters. It's not a game that I would take out of my own volition, which is why it's not on my top 10 list. It's like if I have people to play heavier things with, I will. But out of the massive assortment of light games we have, and it's really quite a big assortment of games that we have that are casual, this gets played the most, and this is the most consistently enjoyable. I think that the last few times I took it out, people messaged me like a week afterwards that they ordered it, just because everyone loves it. So that's one.
Codenames, and my honorary mention is Love Letter. This is specifically Love Letter Premium, but regular Love
find
Letter.
The basic.
Yeah, we couldn't find the basic, and there are a lot of variants of Love Letter, like Love Letter Batman, Love Letter Cthulhu. There's a bunch of Love Letters. And this is an example of one of the games that we sort of played to death, and we don't want to play it anymore. But it did service us for a lot of good time, good, fast time. We made our own version of the game at some point.
Yes,
right? We made our own cards.
You did the coloring, I think.
Yeah, we sort of made our own gay-themed love letter, which was very fun.
Yeah, we called it Pride Letter.
Pride Letter, yeah. So basically, love letter. If you don't know what it is, it's an 18, I think, deck. 16 card deck that you play with, and that's it. It's really sort of a take that in a very micro sort of way. Very fast
rounds.
Very fast rounds. Very funny. You bluff and then you call those bluffs and so on. So very recommended for people who just want a casual filler that's really easy to carry around. Again, this is the deluxe version or the premium version, so it has more cards which we actually don't like. But the base game of Love Letter comes in a very small sort of bag, and you can carry it around with you. And if you have like 15 minutes that you want to do something with that's fun and light, take out Love Letter and have fun.
Yeah, fantastic game. Highly recommended.
Okay, and now to the big guns. We'll start with you, I think.
With mine?
Yeah, so we'll start with your number 10. Do you want to say a few words before we reveal what it is?
About the game?
Yeah.
We love Lassie, so you know.
Right, so we'll start with Lassie. It's the Galerist. One of the biggest.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like it's like kind of hiding us.
Yeah.
But Galerist is a game that I really, really like. Yeah. I think that when you got it secondhand from someone who backed the Kickstarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he sort of got two. It was shrink wrapped.
Okay.
Yeah, and we got it from him, correct.
And I remember Idan taking it out and me thinking, wow, this looks redundant. But then when we got to the components and we started playing with the cardboard, it was like, oh, this is really, really well done. And the game itself is phenomenal. It has a lot of depth, a lot of complexity. It does have a few mechanisms that kind of make it ebb and flow, like most Lacerda games. But if you enjoy that type of thinking, it's really one of his best. In my opinion, it's his best game. I prefer it to Lisboa, I think.
Okay.
What I like about it most is the fact that in a lot of Euro games, you just have zero player interaction or very low amount or negative player interaction. And the Galerist organically manages to get positive player interaction. You kind of play off each other in a very positive way without directly helping. And it feels nice because you are playing with other people. You're playing off their moves. You're playing off the artist that they backed. So it doesn't feel like you're like in Azul where, you know, it's either negative or zero player interaction. So that's what I like. And the theme just shines through in pretty much everything in the game, from the artworks themselves to the cards to like the little like icons that you put on
the artists themselves,
on the artists. So
popularity.
Highly recommended. Very heavy. You can watch our playthrough of it if you want to form your own opinion, but definitely check it out.
Yeah. No, I think it's okay. We'll not make this video too long, so I'll just say briefly that if you do like sort of market games where there's a shifting market, in this case it's only going up, but it's sort of a stock commodity market where us as the gallerists are buying pieces of work from those artists, raising their value. So if you like those kind of games, it's really good. And
but it doesn't
what else?
feel that way. It doesn't feel like a stock commodity game, which we tend to dislike.
That's true, yeah. And also, I guess, again, you have your own tableau and you have your own sort of gallery where you're putting your art pieces and you're deciding whether you want new employees or sending your employees out to the main board. So there's a lot of moving pieces and it's really fun.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to my number 10, which is another very heavy game from the same designer as Codenames. It is Through the Ages. Through the Ages is a sort of 4X game without a map. A lot of negative player interaction, but it's sort of predictable and the other players have a way to manage them. But basically what you're doing Through the Ages is building a civilization from the ancient times, or just building a mine and maybe some temples, all the way to nuclear wars and Bill Gates and, you know, the internet itself is a wonder. So if you like Civ games...
It is a wonder.
It is a wonder. That's true, the internet. In any case, so if you like Civ games, you should definitely check this out. It is very heavy from the rules perspective. They did make it a lot easier in the new Store of Civilization, which is sort of a second addition to the game. They made the art better. They made the rules a lot more streamlined. So if you're checking Through the Ages, make sure that you're looking at the new story, a new Story of Civilization. And there's also an iPad app, so you could try that out.
Yeah, that's
and
recently.
Then, yeah, that's relatively recently. So you could try that out before you actually try the game. So I'll just say that basically it's a card tableau game where you're drafting cards from a sort of moving stream of cards, and you're building buildings, you're recruiting leaders, you're battling each other. You're not really conquering any particular land. Oh, you do conquer islands, territories they're called, for extra passive abilities or one-time abilities. But it's really fun. It plays relatively quickly. I mean, a 2-player game could last two hours, which for a 4X game is relatively easy, relatively fast. I mean, what else can I say? If you play with more than 2 players, then there's pacts that people can sign between each other, which is also kind of nice. And the end game scoring is really variable. You can't really predict who's going to win. So that's also kind of nice. It leaves the tension, you know, very relevant and permanent, because you can't. There's a lot of ways to catch up. That's what I'm trying to say. And points do sort of ramp up towards the end of the game. So that's really fun. There is an expansion that's coming up in 2020.
That's nice.
Yep. A little expansion just to add more cards, nothing fancy. You just take some cards out, put those cards in. It's available in the app, so you could take a look at the app and get acquainted with that expansion. Yep. And that's it. That's Through the Ages.
Yeah, we should play it. I think that's up next on our list.
Yeah. All right. Your number 9.
Yes.
All right. We're going down to the lighter games now, right? With
Baron Park.
Baron Park.
I love this game. I just do. I don't think, like, we reviewed it twice because we made a rules mistake and we were like, no, we'll leave the old one because we love the game.
Yeah.
I love the game. Whenever we have new people over that aren't heavy gamers or we don't have enough time, Baron Park. It's very easy to explain. It's fun to play with. The art is adorable. And it kind of clicks, even for people who are not versed in board games. The idea of completing a puzzle and things having numbers on them with point, it clicks. It's not a heavy game, it's not a very deep game, but for what it is, it's one of the best. Highly, highly recommended.
It has a sort of good depth to complexity ratio because it's really not complex, but it can get sort of very combo-y. So you need to plan out your turns. And I do like the Tetris aspect of it, where you're trying to fill up spaces, and there is an expansion that we haven't shot yet, but we will.
We played it a couple of times. It's just as adorable as the base game.
So definitely check out Baron Park.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Now we're up to your
Number 9, which is higher on your list. So I'll just take a quest and wait.
Okay.
Your number 8.
My number 8 is...
We're still in the low... We're going even lower in the complexity with...
Azul. So...
Azul is a tile-laying game, right? You're building up sort of a wall made of tiles.
I think everyone knows Azul.
Yeah, it's just make sure that
so
everybody knows.
Popular.
Yep.
And for a reason. It's very simple to explain. It's very simple to play. But it does have a lot of depth. And there are various ways to play it. There are the players that like really go heavy into the comboing and the maximizing of their own board. There are the players who go heavy into screwing other people into picking up tiles that they can't take and therefore reducing their number of points. There's a different dynamic every time you take it out, even though the game itself is really, really simple. So yeah, highly recommended.
Yeah, again, very light, but very thinky. You can play it over and over and over again. It plays really quickly. It's a lot of fun. It's very tactile. The tiles are very nice to hold.
Which is always a bonus when you have new people in.
Yeah, it's very shiny, very colorful.
People you want to get into the hobby.
Yeah. So again, if you haven't tried that, do look at it. And there are 2 more games in this series of varying degrees. We reviewed all of them. There's a playlist on our channel that contains all 3.
This is a must. The others, if you played Azul and you've formed your own opinion, it's exceptionally positive. Give the others a try. Yeah. But this is definitely a must.
Okay. So we're moving on to number 8. We're staying with sort of the Portuguese color theme, right?
Yep.
And now we're with the Lisboa Azul. Yeah. Very, very blue. Yeah, I think we're going to move this as well.
We're going to flatten it a bit.
Yeah.
I think that's...
Okay.
Can they see it?
I think they can. Okay. In any case, so what do I like about Lisboa? It's very complex. I think there's a lot of moving parts in Lisboa. Basically, what you're doing here is rebuilding Lisboa, the city, after it has been after it's collapsed because of the earthquake and the fire and the tsunami and so on. Right? There's a flood. And basically, you're interacting with these 3 characters, the king, the architect, and the mayor. And you're drafting cards and playing 1 card on your turn. And then you can build stores, or you can produce goods from those stores, or you can export materials using the player's chips. So everything is sort of connected to everything else. And on your turn, you sort of only do one thing, which is play a card and then choose a bunch of actions. I think up to 2 actions, but that's it. But again, there's sort of this very Vital Lacerda characteristic to it, where it just branches off to little micro decisions that you need to make, and all of them are very, very fun, I think. I don't think that I do have to caveat that I don't think we know a lot of people who love Lisboa as much as we do. Well, right, it's not very popular in that sense.
Really?
No, I mean in our group.
Well,
because
it's heavy and it takes a while to explain.
Teach. Yeah,
the Galerist is a bit prettier, so it's easier to put on the table. You're like, you're managing an art gallery. Boom.
Yeah.
This one's a bit heavier, but it's a fantastic game.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game. The teach is also kind of, I would say, dry and a little bit long, because you do have to explain all the moving parts for them to make sense as a whole. But
they make sense and they converge really, really well. Yeah. Especially the follow-up actions, which are on the one hand, incredibly powerful. On the other hand, like you can see who can follow you and why. It's very clear who's going to do what. So, really, really good game. Highly recommended. We should probably reshoot it because our video of it is
very old. Very old. One of our first videos.
Yes, and not recommended. The video is not recommended. The game is very much recommended.
That's true. Okay. So that's Lisboa. That's my number 8. Moving on to your number 7.
Mm-hmm. Which will be a pass because it's a game that's higher on your list.
That's true. So we're
back to you.
Yeah, we're now at my number 7, which is a game that we don't own anymore because it is one of those games that we played as a group and then we're just done with it, which is it's the only cooperative game in this list, which is Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
Yeah, I'll hold it pretending it's the box.
Yeah, again, we don't have the box. So we could talk about, first of all, Pandemic. If you don't know Pandemic and you want to play a cooperative game, definitely check that one out. It's basically a game where you are a bunch of scientists or other sort of very important personnel trying to save the world from 4 diseases, and you're trying to produce the cures for those diseases and also to actually cure the people that are getting sick around the world. And so you're traveling around the world. You have different player powers because of your roles. And you are basically collecting. It's a card collection. It's a set collection game at the end of the day because you are picking up cards and then you are trying to make a set of cards so that you will be able to produce the cure. Pandemic's Legacy Season 1 is my first Legacy game and the best of all the Legacy games that I've played.
You played it in a group of 3. I was not part of it.
Was it 3 or 4?
Yes, it was 3.
Just
you
3?
were 4 when you started Pandemic Legacy Season 2. Oh. But you were 3 people in Season 1.
That's correct. We played it as a group of 3. And Legacy, if you don't know what a Legacy game is basically a game where you are physically changing the board. You're ripping up cards, you're putting stickers on the board. It's a lot of fun, especially for the first kind of couple of times where you're ripping up cards. It's something that you feel very exuberant after because it's kind of weird. But it does tell a story that is very fun to sort of participate in. And you do make a lot of choices. Cities, I don't want to...
Yeah, just make sure it's not turning off.
I don't want to spoil too much, but
don't
you
spoil anything. It's fantastic.
But you are making a lot of choices regarding the world. You will have to sacrifice. You will have to prioritize things that are in this world, and so 2 groups could have 2 very different sort of experiences or stories to tell after the game, which is a lot of fun. And there are a lot of surprises in the game. I remember one very big surprise that happened sort of 70% of the game, for us at least, and it radically changed the gameplay, and it made a ton of sense from the narrative perspective. So on the one hand, we didn't expect it. On the other hand, it didn't feel out of this world. It didn't feel awkward. It just felt like another thing that happened to us, which opened up a lot more decisions to be made. So that was a lot of fun, and definitely recommend. I think I would try to play Pandemic like a friend's copy.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Or again, there's an iPad version of the game of Pandemic, so maybe try that out first. But then if you see that you're having kind of fun with base Pandemic, which a friend of ours actually borrowed base Pandemic, and then they decided to move on to Pandemic Legacy.
Yes.
So you don't have to sort of, play Pandemic and its 2 expansions. You can just play regular Pandemic that's good and fine. And then if you have a group that you're willing to play 12 to 24 games, the worst case, 24 games of Pandemic, I would very much recommend Pandemic Season 1. I do, however, want to sort of warn people about Pandemic Season 2, which
you guys did not like.
Not good at all. It was not fun from the legacy perspective and from the gameplay perspective. There's a big change to the mechanism of the sort of
Which
foundation
makes
of Pandemic.
sense.
in
But
Pandemic
you
Season
guys
2,
did not like it.
which did not vibe with us at all. But that it does not belittle Pandemic Season 1, which is excellent, excellent. Go ahead, have fun.
I didn't join on the Pandemic fun ride because I don't like base Pandemic, and I just assumed that playing it 20-something times will not be an enjoyable experience for me, which is a consideration, but I was in the other room hearing them cheering and yelling and making noises, and they seem to be having a lot of fun, so highly recommended, but play the base a couple of times and see if you vibe with the mechanics, because you'll be playing them a lot and it is worthwhile, but make sure you like it.
So that's Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
So my number 6 is higher on your list, so we're back to you.
And my number 6 is also higher on your list.
Oh,
yes.
Okay,
So we're
now
at
my 5.
Yes, your 5, which is actually my number 9, which is...
Oh, that's gonna get confusing fast. Elysium! I love this game. I think I got it for you on one of your birthdays, or was it an anniversary or something? You were like lamenting, should I get it, should I not get it? It's expensive, it's not expensive. Yeah, it's not a lament that you have anymore.
No.
And I just ordered it, and I was like, meh, the art's nice. How bad can it be? It's phenomenal. It's a really, really fun game with a lot of replayability. You play as
Demigod,
a bard, I think, that like makes legends about the gods.
Right.
And you basically take cards, you put them in your...
It's a set collection game.
Yes, it's a set collection game, but it has a lot of micro decisions that are really fun. Because when you take a card from your domain to your Elysium, you lose its effect, and you might gain some effects from the transferring, you might gain, you might lose, and all the cards are very different, and you have 8 gods.
8 families, which you pick 5 for every game, so there's a lot of variability.
Yes, and they completely change the way the game is played, because families play off each other really well, and having one more or one less just makes the game feel very, very, very different. It's a bit AP Pro, but the beautiful art and the very unique mechanics when it comes to
each family.
Or not just of each family, but the pillar system. The game gives you 4 pillars each round, and when you take a card, the pillars are like conditions for taking the card, and then you have to remove a pillar. So you're restricting yourself for next turn, but the pillars that you remove have nothing to do with the card you take.
Right.
So it's not like you're paying something to get the card.
Right.
You're just restricting yourself for the next turn. It has a very, very nice strategic element to it of this person wants these cards, this person wants these cards, this is how the turn's gonna go. I assume that letting go of the blue is okay for me because then I'll get the... And it's a fun thought process. I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy the game. The art also, I think I've mentioned it like 3 times because it is phenomenal.
Yeah, every family has its own artist.
Yes,
so each family is sort
great.
of coherent in its own form, but then they're also sort of similar but different between those families. So that's also great. Yep.
Highly recommended. I hope they expansion it at some point, because it's a really good game, and there's no reason to not
add more families.
Yeah,
that's what I was about to say, that if we sort of made a list of top expansions that we want, I think this would be number 1.
Definitely. This is, I think, the only game in our top 10 that is perfect for an expansion and does not have one.
So publisher, create an expansion.
Yes.
All right, so that was your number 5.
And your number 9.
And my number 9. So now we're moving to my number 5, which is your number 6.
Confusing quickly.
Nah. All right. Orleans.
Yes.
This is a bag building game. Basically, you are generating tokens which represent family members. And every turn you will, just like a deck builder game, you will draw on a certain number of family members. You will use them to activate various action spots in your personal board and on the main board. Sorry, not the main board. Your personal board or additional buildings that you can build that sort of act as additional
and you have
activation
the map,
spots.
And you have the execution area.
Right. This game also includes a map where you will physically move around a dude, and you will pick up resources, or you will fulfill orders if you have the expansion, and you will
Build
plop
trading
down
stations.
right, plop down stores, I think they're called. In terms of scoring, it's a relatively easy way of scoring, but it's really smart in the way it does it, where you get a multiplier on your houses, and you get a multiplier for your citizens, which is another thing. So there's a lot of different tracks that you can advance on. So in that respect, it sort of reminds me of a tech track, but it's not really. It's just sort of a lot of tracks that you choose which track you want to move forwards on, and that sort of gives your own personality as a strategy. And also the buildings, the different buildings that you can build, add a lot of variability to the game, right? Because they just come in different order, the buildings themselves. What else? It's a very fun efficiency puzzle, I would say, right? You have your monk and your farmer and your what is it, a warrior or a paladin, whatever, and then you're trying to maximize the actions that you're doing this round with whatever you got, knowing that they all will go to the discard and you will draw more. And also another thing that I like in this bag builder, which is very similar to all the deck builders, which is that you need to call your deck or call your bag, meaning you need to decide which family members you want to remove so that they'll no longer sort of haul or make your efficiency run slower. Efficiency engine run slower. So that's also a very interesting decision to make.
This game took a while for me to click, and I really like it now. I was a bit hung up, if you remember at first, on the fact that the bag builder is not a deck builder because you don't have a discard. Things go back, but they don't necessarily come out.
Yep.
So you could have something that just never comes out.
Yep.
And that was a bit weird for me, but then I realized that the point of it is to be similar to a tech tracker, so that you basically have a higher probability of getting specific units, and all units are good for a multitude of actions that are all efficient to some extent. And that's what makes it really fun, because you have the larger puzzle of where am I going to, how am I going to score the most points, and then you have the smaller puzzle of, okay, these are the 8 family members that I have, the 8 workers that I have, how do I fit them into my larger plan, and which opportunities do I have now? So really fun, highly recommended, quite heavy. Not Lacerda heavy, but quite heavy.
But if you play just the base game, it can also be medium Euro, maybe a little bit of a plus.
I think that if I remember correctly from our review, we recommend getting at least one of the expansions, because the city hall area in the base game is rather boring.
Right, that's true.
And one of the expansions really upgrades that.
Yeah, I think it's the second one.
Okay.
I think the second expansion that came out. The first expansion, if I remember correctly, has a cooperative mode and a negative player interaction mode.
Well, which we're generally not fans of.
Yeah, of either. So definitely check out Orleans. We have a video up in our channel. And that's Orleans. Moving up.
So now we're at my number 4, which is higher on your list, so I'm passing.
All right, and now we're with my number 4, which is your number 7. Do you want to mention?
It is.
All right, which is another big game, Concordia.
We like them big. And
all right.
European cities.
Yes. So in Concordia, you are basically a group of
your families of merchants, or something.
Right? You're moving around a map. You're building buildings. You are producing resources from the regions on the map, and you are drafting cards, right? And this is basically a hand management game where you will pick a card to play, and at some point you will have played all of your cards, and you will have to decide to sort of pass your turn to pick all of those cards back up and then play them in whatever order makes sense for you. And the cards themselves are the point generation of the game, which is a lot of fun. Yeah. So basically at the end of the game, you just look at all your cards and count up how many victory points each card is worth to you. There is a lot of, not necessarily negative player interaction, but there's a lot of player interaction in the sense that if you build in a certain city, that makes the cost for me to build there higher, right? And you can decide on whichever region produces this turn, and that will also produce for me if I have a building there, right?
Yes, so you have to pay more, but it is in the long term worthwhile.
Yeah.
This is a phenomenal game because the basics of it, explaining it to people, isn't much more complicated than something like Ticket to Ride. You have very few actions each turn, you have
The cards
very few
themselves are the
choices.
rules.
The cards themselves are very clear to understand and are written. And after you play a hand or two, it's not a round. It's like after 6 or 7 rounds, which are all very quick, and you kind of pick up your hand, then it kind of clicks that this is what you're supposed to do. What I really like about it is this disconnect between the actions and the points, because if you have many cards of a specific color that, for example, score for varied resources or for varied regions, then that really impacts the goals that you want on the board. But since the cards are all good, you can't plan it in advance. There's opportunism in the game that's really fun to do, because the cards are very expensive. You'll only get the ones on the left edge, and you have very little control of what comes up. And then at some point in the middle, you're like, oh, I will score much more for region than for types of resources. So I need this card, and I'm going to flow with it.
Yeah, the strategy is sort of evolving or coming out, or it's apparent to you as a specific player during the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Very rarely can you actually plan something ahead.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing in this game.
No, I think it's great.
Yeah. You're reacting to a lot of things that are happening in the game, and you are trying to make the most out of them and trying to steer your way.
Yeah, because it's not really, you don't really build an engine. You're kind of looking at a given state and you're thinking, how do I optimize this state that was created by circumstances?
Right.
And I love it. It's very easy to get people into the game because the rules aren't that complicated. The cards are very clear. The board is pretty, which is always a plus.
There are many boards.
And they're all pretty.
Yeah. And
clearly
that's one of the
colored,
pluses.
clearly marked. Everything is very easy to explain to people. And once you get them into the game, it has a very, very interesting flow.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add that in terms of replayability or variability, there's a lot of different maps with little tricks to them, very similar to Ticket to Ride, where there's just a little bit of change or addition to the rules to make it interesting. And there's also, I think, two major expansions. One of them adds a wild resource, another one adds an additional way of scoring. And
I think Venus changes a few of the base cards in a very positive way, making them a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
So Venus is
But definitely check out the
recommended.
base game first. Yeah. Check out the base game first.
Doesn't Venus come with the base game? I don't
remember. You can
remember.
play... Oh, that's true. You can buy Venus, and you can play with the Venus expansion or without. But you don't have to feel obligated to buy specifically Venus. You can buy regular
It's
Concordia.
not that the base game is bad.
Yeah, you'll get 2 maps.
Yeah, I thought to mention that the Venus does make the game a lot more interesting, and it's already a very good game.
Yep. Okay, so that's Concordia.
Yep. Where were we?
So we're number 4. So you're number 3 now.
Oh, okay. Dresses. Bring on the dresses.
In Rococo.
I love Rococo. It's such a fun game. It's very, very, very thinky. It's not very long. And it has this very interesting mechanism where you need to buy extra cards, so you waste cards to get cards, which give you additional actions, but are not necessarily good for you, because you only, if you spend a card to get a card, you basically haven't done anything.
Yeah.
But you spend a card to get a card, and the second card you get gives you an added effect that might be worthwhile, might not be worthwhile. So there's a lot to do on Rococo. Let's explain the
theme. Yeah, so basically each one of us is a tailor shop, right? Where we are buying lace and yarn and cloth, and we're making dresses and suits for people who are visiting Louis the X or something in his palace, and we are actually placing those characters in different floors in the palace, because they will score differently. There's a little bit of area majority in the game, because each room will score according to whomever put the most dresses there. It has a very festive atmosphere, right? Because there's the fireworks at the end of the game.
I was going to mention that, but this is one of the campiest games we have, and I love it. I mean, half of the games we have are about farms and sheep, so let's build some dresses.
Right.
Let's let's sew stuff and look at fireworks.
It's amazing.
The game itself is phenomenal, but adding the campiness and the jewelry and all those...
Yeah, it's very festive,
all the
very
kitsch,
colorful.
It's really nice. And for some reason, they're doing it again. Like they're...
Ian Chul is making the art, which is excellent. They're making it a more deluxeified version.
Yes,
which is not necessary, actually.
In favor of, but the base game is beautiful.
Yeah.
The user experience is wonderful.
Right.
And one of the things that I love most about the game is that it completely evolves as you play through it, and it changes according to the number of players. Playing it as 2 or 3 is a completely different experience to playing it as 5. Not a lot of games. Usually when you play for 4 or 5, you just lengthen the game. It doesn't feel different. But in Rococo, it just changes the emphasis of what it is that you have to do. Suddenly there's a race from the first turn to the fireworks into the upper floor, and everything feels cramped, so you have to go for other ways to score, which are abundant. So yeah, highly recommended. Give it a try. Quite heavy, not the heaviest. I think this is a bit heavier than Firenze, not as heavy as...
But I think it's really thematic, so
it doesn't feel as much.
Right, people sort of identify and they understand intuitively what the actions are doing and why they're doing what they're doing.
I think once you click the whole thing about buying cards, when to buy cards and when not to buy cards, once you get that, then the game is just a joy.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Rococo. That was your number... Are we really on your number 3?
Yep, we're breezing through them, honey.
Okay, so now number 3. Moving from dresses and courtyards and castles to outer space and meeting aliens.
Yes, we're butch now.
Right, in Gaia Project. Woo! So Gaia Project is sort of a successor to
Terra Mystica.
Terra Mystica. I always keep... Yeah, sorry. Every player is a different race with a very different board and special abilities, which is really fun.
Very, but the slight differences are very important.
Right. And there are a lot of races to choose from. There are actually 14 different races that you can choose from. And you are... It's not a 4X game, but there is a map, and you are moving around the map. You're building buildings, you're expanding through the galaxy, and you are forming federations, and you are advancing on very thematic tech tracks.
Yes.
Unlike Terra Mystica. Very thematic tech tracks. That's excellent. And you are, again, specializing as a player. You're picking up specific actions that you will be able to perform as the game moves along. And what else? You are picking up technologies, which is a lot of fun, regardless of the tech tracks, actually. You can pick up your own technologies. And I think it's also a very nice optimization puzzle where you are trying to make the most out of each turn, because there are, I think, only six rounds, right? Is it really 6? Yeah.
It is really 6 rounds. It doesn't feel like 6 rounds because the game is very tight, and it really forces you to squeeze the most out of every possible move.
Right. There's not a lot of engine building, I think, in this game, right?
There is a bit when it comes
to the
tech tracks. The tech tracks are specialization, and some of them help you build an engine, some of them don't.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like best about Gaia Project that they sort of improved
is the scaling?
The scaling is one thing because it scales.
Terra Mystica does not scale.
The map changes, right? There's a lot of variability, not only because of the races, but because the map changes, unlike Terra Mystica. But also, I wanted to mention the power balls, where you're moving your political power around the different states.
You have to collect all 7.
What?
Power balls, DBZ.
Never mind. And in any case, you are allowed to actually remove power, not to cycle it, but to remove it.
That didn't exist in Terra Mystica?
No.
Wow, I forgot that.
No, sorry. You were allowed, but then in Terra Mystica, you weren't able to add more. So it was sort of a one-way thing. And in Gaia Project, you can make a big move, make a big action, sacrifice a lot of your power, but then you can rely on other things to bring that power back to your cycle there, right? And that adds a little bit more of a dimension, of an interesting dimension.
To me, the main differences between this and Terra Mystica are the issue of scaling. Terra Mystica is the same map.
Yeah.
So on 2 players, it feels vacant, and in a larger number of players, it feels
crowded.
Incredibly crowded towards the end, which is, it's a bit of an older game. It's older game design, that's fine. But they improved it vastly in Gaia Project, making the game a lot more fun, a lot more complex. And highly recommended. Just keep in mind, it is heavy, it's very thinky, and sometimes you need to really plan out a turn, which does take a bit of time. So games can be drawn out, but it's very fun.
Yeah.
Like, we really
deep.
like it.
Yeah. All right, so that's Gaia Project, which was my number
3.
Moving on to your number
2. Yeah, that's the one. The green one.
Yeah, number 2. All right.
You're surprised that it's number 2?
No.
I thought this game.
Yeah, I know. Then talk about it.
I love Glenmore. Idan doesn't love it as much. I adore this game. It's very intelligent, it's very fun, it's very quick and fluid, but surprisingly heavy. What you
there's
do
a turn.
is...
There's a time track, right?
Yeah, there's a time track, and there's a...
Which sort of makes players decide between, do I want that very high reward action, but then I'll have to wait for other players to catch up with me before I can get another turn, or do I make less rewarding actions, but then I'll make more of them, right? And that's sort of the balance that is part of the interesting part of Glenmore.
It's, to me, one of the most interesting parts, because you can make a series of quick actions and just keep it your turn, or you could, go for something that's extremely beneficial and then have less turns. But this is balanced out in 2 ways, both because at the end of the game, if you were more efficient and you got a higher score and you got the same score with less tiles, then you'll win, because the person who has the least tiles dictates the minimum, and everyone else loses points.
You're penalized for having a larger city.
You're penalized for taking too many tiles. So it creates a very fun dynamic where you pick up a tile and you ask yourself, is this worthwhile? Right. If it is worthwhile, where do I place it? Because if you place it next to many other tiles, all of them get activated, which is awesome. But then the tile you just placed will get activated less, because you have less place to put tiles around it. I'm sorry that we went into the mechanisms that quickly, but this game is very unique when it comes to the mechanisms and the feel of it. And it takes a while to click, but it's really fun when it does, because everything is balanced off of each other. And you have so many ways to score points. You have the contests, you have the end game victory conditions, like you have areas that give you points for each. And then you have the scalability of the points. Like if you win by having 2 more than the minimum, then you get 2 points. But if you win by 5, then you get 8 points. And if you get above 5, then you don't get additional points. So everything is really tight. And if I can gush a bit more about the mechanics, the money. I love the fact that the game has a limited amount of money and a market system. So basically, when you put something in the market, that's money that stays in the game, and you're restricted to the exact number of coins, making it a very legitimate strategy to either rob the market of specific types of commodity or just flood it. And there's so much to do in such a tiny box. Highly recommended that you give it a try if you like them heavy. And
wait for the
it's
Chronicles.
on the way, isn't it?
Chronicles, which should arrive in a week or 2.
Yeah, we'll be on it as soon as it gets here.
All right, so that's Glenmore.
Yep.
That was your number 2. My number 2 So I think my number 2 is sort of my number 1. If you are removing the...
Is it me, honey? Is it me?
All right, we'll talk about it. My number 2 is Alchemist, which is your number... 4. All right. Alchemist.
It's one of the first games we got. I think it's like the 6th game you bought.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I remember how much I researched about the game and how much I sort of practiced teaching the rules because I wasn't...
The art is like
No,
so
I think they can still see the art. Okay. But yeah, I remember practicing how to teach the game in the most amount of... using the most amount of theme and theme reasoning.
I remember you thoroughly enjoying the rulebook.
Oh, yeah.
You had fun reading the rulebook, which is very rare in board games.
Yeah, CG games take very great... They go the extra mile of making the rulebook sort of, not story, but they do inject jokes and they do inject a lot of theme that is appropriate to where it is placed in the rulebook. And the rulebook is very clearly laid out and defined, so it's really easy to also reference stuff. Mm-hmm. So Alchemist, if you're not familiar, is sort of an app-based game. The app is the GM. It knows the secret, right, of which ingredients correspond to which chemicals. And during the game, you are gathering up resources that you find in the woods, like mushrooms and feathers and vegetables and all sort of things. And you're mixing them up and brewing potions. And the fun thing is that you're mixing up 2 ingredients, and then you ask the app, what kind of potion did that end up with? Did I make a cure medicine or a poison potion, right? So that's a lot of fun. There's a sort of an inner game, and there's the outer game. The inner game is you trying to deduce through logic, through your experiments, what is the right, again, alchemical for each ingredient. So you have your own little lab that is behind a shield, and you're marking your experiments, and you're scribbling away on your little paper pad, trying to make decisions. And you also get to publish theories, and that sort of exposes your information, or you can bluff your information to other players. But it will still give you points, regardless of whether you're correct or wrong. You can debuff each other, so you can say, no, you're wrong. Debunk each other, sorry. And you can tell the apps, please tell us whether that player is correct or wrong, and that'll deduct points or gain points. So that's a lot of fun. The theme really comes through. There's a magical fantasy theme to this game. It's really fun if you're playing with some sort of Harry Potter music in the background, because everything is really light and comedic, and but it sort of balances out the depth of the game, right?
Yes, it's a very heavy game.
Yeah.
It's a very, very heavy game. I think it's the heaviest game on my list. Comparable to Galerist, but it's definitely one of the heavier ones, and it usually doesn't feel as much. And after you play it a lot and you master it, there's this fun way of how do you approach information, because you play off of each other, and other people make experiments and make conclusions, and they publish papers which you know are wrong, but you're not sure how wrong and which elements and stuff. So there's a way of approaching it that other games just don't have. It's like this game, you play off of information from other people that you know is only partially correct or is correct, and you cross it with your own information, and it's really, really, really fun. Usually games that are this heavy don't have as much player interaction, definitely not this unique kind, because it's not just positive or negative, it's like all over the place. You debunk each other, but debunking someone gives information to everyone. So, you know, it's beneficial, it might deduce points, it might deduct points, it might not. It's heavy, very fun, and
very unique.
Very unique. It's not just
like anything
the
else.
app. Like I find that a lot of times when people talk about the game, they talk about the app, and that's not the interesting part. No, the app's not interesting. The dynamics between the players and how the board changes throughout the game is what makes it so much fun. It also scales really well up and down, at least the base game. I think that one of the expansions adds more cubes and adds more actions, and then it kind of gets weird in a low number of players. But the base game scales well to any number of players and is very enjoyable. And I think in our review we highly recommended getting the expansion because it adds some much needed randomization. Once you play the game a lot, you kind of master the first few turns.
Right. Another reason to get the expansion is that there is some sort of luck dependency in the base game. You can get screwed by just luck. And the expansion mitigates that. It makes sure that if you are getting those certain circumstances, you'll still get a lot to do with them and you won't suffer from it.
So highly, highly recommended.
Okay. That's Alchemist. And your number one.
Yep. Bring it, honey. Bring in the towers. Ay, Firenze. Firenze is also a game that's one of the first ones we...
Yeah. So,
yes, Leo, who was on our channel, got this second hand.
I got this for you as a surprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our copy is in German because it was completely out of print for years. So Idan got it for us in German, and then we printed stickers on the cards and everything. So
they were sleeved. The stickers went on the sleeves of the cards.
Obviously, but yeah. So very unique, very personal game for us. And other than that, it's a really good game in my opinion. I very much recommend it to people who want to get into the heavier things, but don't really want to mess with the Alchemists and the Lacerdas just yet, because it's medium, but it's on the heavier side. It's very thematic and it's fun and tactile because you build towers and you destroy towers, and the card system is very intelligent, but it has a bit of luck and it has interesting player interaction, so you don't feel like you're playing a very, very heavy game.
There's the card track, very similar to Small World, where you can pick up a card that's later in the track, but then you have to pay resources,
and then
which is really interesting.
Raise the value
of the card.
Of the card.
At some point, a player will pick up that lower value card just because of the extra resources that's on it. And it's also very tactile in the sense that you are literally picking up bricks and building a little tower of a certain color, and then you are not fulfilling a contract, but you're
selling it to a rich family, so you put your seal on the board.
Yeah, there's a very light racing element to the game because
it's not a very. There is a
set number of. There is majority, but there's also sort of a set number of orders that you can fulfill, and if someone fulfills it before you, then you need to find solutions to deal with the tower that you have on your board. And one of the most interesting things about this game is that you do have to consider your next move at every point in time, because you have to make sure that you're either selling your towers or keep maintaining them, keep building them up. Otherwise, bad things will happen to you. And so you very much are looking at the different players around the table, and you're making sure that they will not sort of limit your options, your future options. So that's very interesting. And I think, it's a very opportunistic game in the sense that you can look at a card and see, if I pick that card up right now, then it'll hurt you, and you're fine, but it's really going to benefit me.
That happens in the game, which is fine. And there's also the issue of, usually in games where the value of the card changes according to what players want to pay for it. I think it happens in Century Spice Road, and there are a lot of games that have that. Usually the cards are only positive.
Right.
But in Firenze, a lot of the cards, not a lot, but a fraction of them are either negative or neutral. They could be negative just for you. They could be negative for everyone.
Right.
They could be a goal that you're now raising that other people can achieve. So basically, it's each turn you look at the card and you say, do I want to play the extra bricks so I can avoid it? Or does it already have like 15 bricks because no one wants this card and now it's suddenly worthwhile taking?
Yeah.
So very dynamic, very fun to play off of each other, very interesting player interaction. I highly recommend it. I think it shines in 3 players. I think in 4 players the card turnover is a bit too quick, so you can't prepare for negative events. But in 3 players it's phenomenal, works great in 2 players, and just generally highly recommend. It's like number 1 on my list. And there was a new version now, right?
Right, there's a reprint, and they made it language independent. So now instead of text, there's just icons, which are, I think, very clear.
Yes.
So you're not giving up on anything.
They also changed a few of the cards.
Oh, they rebalanced the cards.
Yes, I know, because I played with people in the new edition. We were at someone else's house and I was GMing and he had the new copy, and I played the card as I remembered it, not as it was. That was kind of funny. Yeah, the storehouse fire used to affect only you. Now it affects everyone.
Interesting.
So that was fun.
Okay, and now
Your number 1.
my number 1, which is a biggie. It is definitely a biggie. It's Gloomhaven. We can literally, not literally, but we can fit inside of it. Symbolically. Gloomhaven.
We can literally, symbolically not fit in the box.
Not literally. Gloomhaven. It's an amazing experience. It is amazing experience. It's not the best of the games. Like if you look at a specific scenario, a specific play session, it's not amazing. But the overall arcing story and the different characters that you embody, and their specific storylines, and the story of Gloomhaven, the city, and the upgrades and the customizations that you're bringing onto your specific characters along the game are amazing. This is a cooperative game. It's not a legacy game in the sense that you're ripping up stuff, although you are, but it's not considered a legacy game.
You are changing things, but you're not changing them in a very meaningful way.
Yeah, it's a scenario-based, story-based game set in a fantasy world, very unique, very rich, very self-contained, not generic fantasy, which is excellent. We played, I think, 70 games of this, right? 70 to 80 sessions of this game. We had a couple of months where we just placed the game on the table, just not even bothering to put it back in the box. And
we played mainly Gloomhaven for a bit of time, and we had people join us in.
Yeah, that's also
some joined for a longer period, some for less.
Yeah. Basically, what you're doing in a given scenario is that there is a map that is dictated by a storybook, and you are little figurines that are on that map, and you can, using cards, which is a very, I'll get to the cards in a second. Using cards, you're picking up your actions, and you can move around in the map. You can kill off enemies that are spawning. You can pick up gold. You can pick up treasure. You are moving between rooms. You are performing magic spells, right? The characters are very different from each other. Each character wants you to play a different style of game. Some characters are actually 2 figurines and not just the one. So it's very interesting. I think it deals very well with the alpha player problem. Not that I think that we would have an alpha player problem, but there is some sort of limited communication that is recommended when playing Gloomhaven. You're not really allowed to talk specific numbers. You are allowed to talk thematically. I will go there and try to kill that dude instead of I will move 3 steps and hit for 8 points.
Yes.
And there is also a sort of randomization factor built into the game where you are flipping a card that tells you the modification to your hit points. Right. So you are trying to build a party, right? 1 healer, one tank, if you can. 1 healer, 1 tank.
It really depends on the number of players.
Right, but it also, you can mitigate that by the types of cards that you're bringing in with you, right? Because you're deciding which cards you want.
Characters are very versatile in what they do. So most players can either mitigate damage or heal. Maybe they can only heal themselves. Maybe they can heal others, but not efficiently. All characters can do damage. All characters can somehow support. They just do it in very, very different ways. So if you're playing a character with 4 players or playing her with 2 players, you will bring different cards and different actions to the table and a different strategy, which is nice. It's very nice.
So if you don't if this is the first time you're hearing about Gloomhaven, try to imagine. I don't want to say Diablo, but try to imagine
A dungeon crawler.
yeah,
It's a term. People know what dungeon crawler means.
yeah, a video game, a dungeon crawler video game, where it is cooperative and you are playing with other people, but they're literally sitting across from you around the table, and you are cooperating. I think in a sense that video games cannot really reproduce. It's very unique in that sense. It's not a Euro. It's not a very a merry, thrashy kind of game, right? It's something else, which I really like, and it's a wonderful. Like I said at the beginning, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. Just because you are playing and replaying more and more scenarios, you're sort of transposed to this universe which you are discovering more and more of, and every game is very fulfilling, right? Every game is sort of unique, and you want to get to that victory condition because you know that will open up something else, or you'll retire your character, and then you have a whole bunch of mechanisms to obsess with, which are completely new to you as a player. So that's excellent. So you do need to sort of allocate an amount of time. This is not a 1 week sort of game. What do you mean patience?
You finish your thought, and I'll get to mine.
No, I just want to say that I think it's best to say, okay, for the next 2 months, and it is sort of a high ask.
It is a commitment. It is definitely a commitment, both monetary and in terms of time. Because if you get this and you play it like once or twice, then you have not experienced anything of the game. So if I can go back, this is not on my top 10 list because I consider it a completely different thing from all my other games. And I think you also mentioned it. This is very, very different to anything else. And it comes with pluses and it comes with minuses. I think that Gloomhaven clicked for us, at least for me, when we breathed in and we said, fuck the rules, we're here to have fun.
Right.
The rules are a bit weird. Movement, especially when you control enemies, is a bit weird. And sometimes you can just get screwed with a certain scenario and certain characters and certain luck mitigation. And then the game isn't fun. It doesn't flow. So you need to come to Gloomhaven with a lot of patience, willing to learn a lot, and also willing to occasionally breathe in, breathe out, and say, yeah, I know the rules say that there are a maximum of 15 skeletons, but there's a maximum of 6 now, because otherwise we're not going to finish the scenario and I'm going to go home and cry. So you have to understand that this is a co-op game and you're here to have fun, and it's okay to occasionally sidestep the rules in order to have fun.
Yeah, I think there were 3 missions or 4 missions that we failed on, and we decided, we succeeded on them. We just want to move on.
You at some point decided that my bear character is ruining your game. And we force retired it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't remember that.
We were like, okay, he's not having fun with my superhuman bear, and therefore we're retiring it, and I am getting a different character so you can have fun.
Right.
And one of our friends that joined us was like at some point, well, I'm bored of this character. I was bored of it last mission. Let's give me a different one.
Yeah.
That's also something that you have to kind of go with the flow. As far as mechanisms go, I think this is a very, very, very interesting game. The way the characters are built is really fun. You just go online, read all the cards, and just start to strategize and think about how you're going to build it, which cards are you going to upgrade, which is very, very fun. And that's on the one hand. On the other hand, not all characters are suited for all scenarios. Some characters are just absolute garbage in 2 players, and some characters are insane in 2 players, but only when you're not facing bosses because they do chip damage and the game is on a timer, which is something that I'll get to in a second. Some characters are just useless most of the time, and then you get to a boss and then they just one-shot it. So the game is not very well balanced, and you have to go into Gloomhaven knowing that you're not going to get a balanced experience. And the next character you're going to draw, because one of the main systems and one of the most enjoyable systems is playing through a character till it force retires and then getting another one. You could get the same class, you could get a different character from a different class. It's up to you. You have that choice, but you will be forced retiring a lot of characters. So it's not fully a Diablo-ish experience. You're not choosing a necromancer and playing with the necromancer throughout the entire game. You will be swapping a lot of them, which is very unique, very fun, and also puts a spotlight on the balance issue. So if you're getting this, and again, very good game, very fun, highly recommended. Come with an open mind, be prepared for a completely different experience, and do your best to have fun. If you need to retire a character or retire someone else's character to have fun, do it.
Yeah, the game has a lot to offer. You're not missing out on anything if you're just deciding to sidetrack an obstacle, whatever that obstacle may be, because it's a very rich game. I think the game comes with 100 scenarios. Again, you progress.
A bit less, but it also comes with a scenario randomizer.
Right.
So, you know.
Yeah. So it's very full, a very interesting, a very exciting experience. We are looking forward to the second game in the series, Frosthaven, I think it's called.
Yes. I said I was going to talk about something.
Oh.
What was I
maybe
going
the
to talk
cards?
about?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, the cards. The cards, because that's a very abrasive mechanism.
Okay.
If you remember correctly, we started as 4 players and 2 of them just played 2 scenarios and said, well, screw this, and left.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for that is that you have a hand, and once you use a card, it either goes into your trash or goes into your discard. Every time you want to pick up your discard, you have to trash a card. So basically, you're on a timer.
That's a timer, yeah.
And every character has a different timer. Some of them start with more cards, some of them start with less. Some of them have more trash cards, some of them have less. So you could be at a point where you're just feeling like you're constantly on the clock because you look at your cards and you're, well, I can squeeze 26 actions out of this and we have to finish the map in 26 actions. It's a bit stressful at first, especially once you don't remember?
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah.
They just looked at it and said, well, this is not fun. Everything I do is basically blocking me further on. I am not having fun. I'm not playing anymore. So if you're the type of person who reacts that way to that, Gloomhaven is not for you. The game is frustrating. It has abrasive mechanisms. It has intentionally abrasive mechanisms.
Right.
You could draw a random event, whether you're helping the villager or not helping the villager. You choose to help him, and then he tries to backstab you or something completely random like that. And then you start with 2 cards less, and you're like, I have 4 cards. I now have 20 actions to finish this scenario. I might as well just not play. And that happens, and it's okay. And you have to breathe in, let go, and have fun with it, because it's a very unique experience.
Yeah.
It's just not for everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so that was Gloomhaven. And that is it. Our top 10 games. All right.
I think Gloomhaven just said, screw this scenario. I don't have enough cards and left.
So that was our top 10 for the decade. And let's face it, our top 10 in general, I think.
Yeah, we haven't been board gaming for that long.
Yeah, and board games in general are getting better and better and better. So anything that you want to add before we close this one up?
Nope, that was a fun decade though. Lots of fun games.
All right. So tell us in the comments below, what are your top games for this decade or for this year in general? What are your most played games? And check the links below for videos of us playing most of the games, like 90% of the games that we talked about.
And if you want us to do something Gloomhaven related,
tell us,
because we were debating this for a long time, because we don't want to spoil anything, but we do want to show the game because we have very strong and mostly positive emotions about it. but what scenario do we do that doesn't spoil but get the feel of it? So we're very conflicted on it, and if there's demand, we'll do it.
Yeah. All right. So we hope you enjoyed this lengthy list video, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Next time is Through the Ages.